Welcome to the Fontanelle Final Bell here on the Rural Radio Network. I'm Susan Littlefield. We've got a lot of things to look at when it comes to this market trade this week. A lot of balls in the air, fingers in the pot, however you want to look at it over the next, 36 to 72 hours, some effects that we're going to see on these markets come Sunday night when it reopens, and then, of course, throughout the trade on Monday. Wheat harvest might be taking a little bit of a pause because of the weather that moved through Kansas, which is a good thing for those folks needing the rain. But we're going to find out how that's all affecting the market trade as well. Well, Kyle Bumsted joins us. He is with Allendale Incorporated, and I think, Kyle, because you've got some contacts in this wheat harvest that's underway, what are you hearing from guys as they're out there in the combines?
Well, for the most part, it's been better than expected as far as quality and bushel-wise. I mean, some of your poorer ground is doing that 15 to 20 bushel acre like it did down south, but the further north you get, it typically has been getting better, as is history. And a lot of 12, 13% moisture, 62 to 65 pound test has been coming in across the scale.
Number-wise, we've heard the protein, and really this has caught many by surprise at the quality that's there for this crop.
Yeah, for sure. It really has. And, as a producer with harvest here, there's a lot of decision making here in the next couple of weeks of what do we do with those bushels here off the combine, because some have a few days, some have a month, some don't have much time to price those bushels coming off the combine. And seasonally, the cash hard red winter wheat index does take a dive going into the first part of July here. And then after the first couple weeks in July, we seem to get a little bit of rally in the cash wheat side, usually 10 to 20 cents. I think on average, a 5-year average is somewhere between 13 and 15 cents. So that may or may not help some producers in deciding what to do with those bushels off the combine.
What are you hearing globally when it comes to this wheat market? I know that there has been some weather concerns in the Black Sea region. Is that still going to be factored in? Are we going to see some benefits for this great crop that's coming out of Kansas and Oklahoma right now?
That's a possibility, but I mean, when we start talking about Russia, I think last time we talked about the reliability of those sources of the weather over there in Europe and Russia and the Black Sea region. I don't know as you can really ever trust their models 100%. But South America is having a little bit of an issue. They have cut down their planted wheat acreage a little bit in Argentina due to the dry weather and some things like that. China's been maybe kicking the tires on buying some hard red winter wheat from us as well. So that may have an effect here. And technically, we've sold off really hard this week. And so I would look for a little bit of a bounce here to start the week. I mean, we've stopped the combines here, and it's time for a little bit of a harvest rally, in my opinion.
July options, talk a little bit how that's affecting the trade.
You've got some movement here, especially noted in the corn today. A lot of the volume was taking place in the spreads. People, July options go off a week from today. As a matter of fact, first notice day is on the 30th, and a lot of people are moving their July contracts out to like September in the corn, or even a little bit further on out in the soybeans, and moving them out in the wheat as well.
What are we seeing for this corn market? We had talked earlier this week during the Fontanelle Final Bell that there was some concerns out there, especially in Minnesota, some areas of Wisconsin, where it's just getting dry. And we saw the dryness talked about as well in the Western Corn Belt, but we were fortunate enough here to get some much needed rain overnight.
Right. The rains have been, I want to say, general, but they've also been spotty as well. Talking producers in Minnesota and South Dakota that were needing some rains, and even North Dakota that's even worse, needing some rains up in there. They did catch some of these rains. Some places not a lot, but enough to maybe get them by until the next system moves through. And there's a lot of areas of western Iowa, eastern Nebraska that did get some generalized, 1 to 2 inch rains. Even further south in southeast Nebraska, there was even some bigger rains, 4 to 6 inch rains coming across there as well. And down through central Kansas, I know that dryland corn was needing to drink down in there as well. And a lot of areas got it. The far western edges, maybe not near as much, but there was a pretty well generalized rain. And here in northern Illinois, we're forecast to be getting some rain here over the weekend as well. So it's in general moving across, and I think the trade's going to be watching that Sunday night, going to be looking for those rainfall totals. And how far east did it go? Did it go out to Indiana and Ohio, out to the eastern Corn Belt, and pick up some of those areas where it's a little bit dry as well?
So Kyle, do you think at this point we can definitely say we've come into this weather type of related market, at least for the near term?
I would say yes. The calendar and the weather say yes. We're probably in that weather time frame. I just don't know, in my opinion, how much it's going to move as we see this, as we sit here.
Good to think about. We were talking earlier, actually, before we even started the Fontanelle Final Bell, and you made a really great statement, because we continue to hear lots of talk about China, but you said, let's get the confirmation before we get the reaction. And I think we've had a lot of that going on, where we're just kind of knee-jerk reaction on what's going to happen with China, whether it's beans, hogs, ethanol, but no real confirmation to come back with it.
That's correct. I mean, we've heard the last couple of days about them buying a couple cargoes of ethanol, but what happened to it? Where is it? Anything further? And like I mentioned earlier, maybe in the market for some hard red winter wheat as well. What happened to it? Maybe buying 3 to 5 cargoes of soybeans. It's good news to prop the market up, but I think in order to keep it going, we're going to need some sort of confirmation that this is actually happening.
But it's got to cause for some nervousness within the trade, because every time they get that reaction, the markets and China and not getting the confirmation, it's just a constant rubber ball bouncing.
It is. And we're not sure what the next headline is going to be as far as politically. The trade talks in Hawaii went well, but then shortly after there was some headlines crossing social media. Well, we can possibly cut ties with Beijing if we want to. And so it's still headline driven quite a bit. Very much so. We'll stick around, folks. We've got a lot more to come as we hit part 2 of the Fontanelle Final Bell. Wrap up this trading week. I want to get Kyle's thoughts as to what he thought of the week as a whole, and as we head into another week of markets watching the weather and beyond. We do have more coming up. It's the Fontanelle Final Bell on the Rural Radio Network. Well, welcome back to the Fontanelle Final Bell here on the Rural Radio Network. I'm Susan Littlefield as we continue this conversation with Kyle Bumsted, and looking at what's been happening. And before we go into the livestock side of trade, Kyle, I kind of wanted you to reflect on this last week of trading. It's been another kind of seesaw type of trade. What are you seeing, and what we learned from this week can help our producers going into next week? Well, there's been some good technical indicators on the charts. The soybeans have turned up. The corn, it has turned up to an extent as well. We need to be watching the managed money fund short that's coming out here later on today, seeing if they're cleaning some of that up in the corn, if they're pulling some of those shorts off the table. Where are we at in soybeans? We got a huge short in the bean meal. That could be helping us out as far as getting the crush back in line and some things like that. The wheat, I'd like to see where the funds are sitting at as far as like the KC wheat, the Chicago and Minneapolis wheat. And if we've noticed here lately that any of these wheat complexes, whether it's Chicago, Kansas City, or Minneapolis, they really haven't been trading in tandem like they do in an analog type year. We didn't really talk much about soybeans in the last segment. Anything else on this bean market that we need to be thinking about as we wrap up the week? Probably more headlines, and we probably will start looking out here to those extended forecasts here as we get towards the 4th of July. We're going to be looking out towards that August, September weather time frame, the NOAA weather maps, and 3-month time frame. This kind of give us a guideline of what we see for heat and or rainfall coming across the plains for finishing up the bean crop. Jump over now to the livestock side. During the commercial break, you and I were talking about what was happening in the markets, and we did see another drop in the box beef trade. From that perspective, I'm sure consumers are going, okay, so when do I get to see that drop at the grocery store or at my favorite restaurant? That's a very good question. When I go grocery shopping with the family on the weekends, I make it a point to walk through the meat case, and it has not come down at the retailer. I mean, last week we took a little over $100 off the boxes, and I think we're close to $40 this week on the boxes. I don't know the afternoon cutout here, but today it was up just a little bit, but we have been seeing a significant drop in the box beef. But at the meat counter, it's not coming down near as much. And noticing the load count, there's been heavy offerings as far as the beef and the pork side of things. And I'm questioning demand here from the consumer if we have another round of outbreaks and people are asked to stay home. Do we get another surge at the meat case? Do they come back and buy and stock up again? Or are we sitting here in the dog days of summer, it's 100 degrees, we don't want to grill, so we're not going to buy those higher end cuts of meat and stand out there and grill in the heat. So how does a cattle producer prepare for that? Because I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next weeks and months ahead, but they know the backlog is there, and they may have cattle in their lot that are getting ready to be moved and haven't gone yet. That's a very good question, and I would suggest staying in contact with your end users, processors, making sure you're out in front of them. I know there's cattle that were on the April show list down in Texas that are still on the show list today, and they've been contacting buyers, every week saying, hey, I've still got cattle here. When can you take them? We've got to figure out a way to get through the big cattle. We're still backing up cattle. We haven't got into the backlog yet, but we are cleaning up some of the big carcasses. We're still finding some issues in the north where we can't move some big cattle or even get bids, but staying in contact with them and, just making sure you're out there in front of them, trying to get some cattle, on the hook basically.
And like you mentioned, those dog days of summer, unfortunately, we deal with it every year during this part of the summertime, get past Father's Day. And boy, it's tough because this year is so different.
It is. Something I'd like to note too, as far as the heat, we talked in the last segment about the dry weather and stuff like that. I want to focus kind of on those southern plains, southeast Colorado, the panhandle of Texas, the panhandle of Oklahoma, northeast New Mexico. There's a lot of feeder cattle that could possibly, if this drought persists down there, I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of feeder cattle that could be coming in because typically those ranches aren't set up to feed or hold their calves for a significant amount of time until it gets better. They've pretty well got to use the hay for the cows. Well, do those feeders come to town early if this drought does persist down there? It seems to be growing in a bigger area when you look at the drought map.
Well, and that makes you wonder, how much more of a backlog are we going to see? Because if we've got ready cattle to go, there's no place for the new calves to come in.
That's correct. Background yards could get full fast, and we're still working through those numbers. Yes, and that's where I kind of question this placement number that's coming up on this on feed with the animal assessment at 97.5. If we're backing up cattle, I don't know as we could get. I don't know if the placements are going to be correct here, or, what weight bracket of placements are we placing? Are we placing bigger cattle? Are these cattle coming out bigger, or what type of cattle are getting placed? That's my question. That's why I want to see the breakdown here coming out here in a few minutes.
All right. Sounds good, Kyle. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Hey, Susan, you can get a hold of me at my desk at 815-578-6167 or on my cell phone at 712-880-6037.
Thanks so much, Kyle Bumsted has been joining us today. Just a reminder, commodity futures and options do have a substantial risk of loss. They're not suitable for all investors. That is the Fontanelle Final Bell being brought to you by Fontanelle Hybrids and all the local Fontanelle dealers. You can check this out as a podcast and at ruralradio.com, wherever you subscribe, on Spotify and on video as well through our website. It's the Fontanelle Final Bell on the Rural Radio Network.